choices, new players, new models of care. You know consumer-first healthcare is everywhere. For us to build the future, to see what's new, we gotta look at the world from a different point of view. Consumer innovation ain't going away. I say it's here to stay. Today it leads the way. We gotta drop the silos. We're all the same team. Experience, business, tech, and marketing. So join us now. Join the revolution. Consumer-first health is the evolution. Status quo or like status no. Yeah, this is the healthcare rap. Yo, come on, let's go. Welcome back to the leading podcast about consumer innovations in healthcare. I'm Jared Johnson, and here's what's going to go down today. We have the Flava of the Week about McKinsey's latest Consumer Insights report. What opportunities does the report highlight for healthcare organizations to better engage consumers digitally? And how can this drive market leadership and differentiation for health systems that take it seriously? I'll talk about that. Then Matt DiVenere joins me to talk about the role of thought leadership and content in expediting behavior change in an industry that's known for moving slowly and carefully. You'll hear the latest trends that Matt is seeing in healthcare and health IT thought leadership, and how when it's done right, it can drive change about consumer transformation and other key initiatives. It's time to dive right in. Are you ready? Let's go. Flava of the Week. McKinsey's most recent insight report gives us a lot to sink our teeth into when it comes to consumer trends, and provides a fresh reminder that no matter what big box stores are entering or exiting the market at any given time, there have never been more opportunities to differentiate and drive business goals by prioritizing consumers' expectations and experiences. The report is dated April 15th, 2024, and is titled Consumers Rule: Driving Healthcare Growth with a Consumer-Led Strategy. It sets up by summarizing that as healthcare organizations look to the future, they cannot overlook the need to place the consumer at the center of all they do. Only by improving care outcomes and consumer experiences will they deliver financial returns and remain competitive while meeting consumers' holistic health and wellness needs. It continues by saying that consumers are more motivated than ever to choose healthcare options that offer a better experience, higher quality of care, and greater value. As the shift to consumerism continues, organizations that embrace it most successfully will emerge as leaders in the healthcare ecosystem. In the near term, developing a distinctive consumer experience could translate to financial gains through increased acquisition, retention, and share of engagement, reduced administrative costs, and improved CAHPS and Medicare Advantage star ratings. The report really is jam-packed, so I'm going to split it up over multiple weeks. Today, let's take a look at trend number 1. Consumers are spending more on health and wellness, but are not satisfied and want more innovation. U.S. wellness spending in 2023 was more than $480 billion, with 5% growth in spending on wellness products and services. This is a good reminder that when we talk about healthcare choices, it isn't always just about picking a doctor or facility. Consumers tend to think about health and wellness together and choose products and services accordingly. I was intrigued particularly by 3 points in this section. Point number 1. 58% of surveyed U.S. consumers indicated they prioritize their personal health and wellness more now than a year ago. Yet despite high levels of engagement in health and wellness activities, a sizable percentage of consumers are not satisfied with their overall healthcare experiences. The disconnect between high consumer importance and spending and relatively low satisfaction presents a meaningful opportunity for healthcare organizations to distinguish themselves as leaders in meeting consumers' holistic health and wellness needs. Point number 2. In the years to come, it will be critical for the healthcare industry to prioritize digital consumer engagement, both to keep pace with other industries and to meet evolving consumer expectations. According to data from the 2019, 2022, and 2023 McKinsey Consumer Health Insights surveys, healthcare consumers of all ages have become accustomed to using digital products and services and are eager to see them incorporated into their healthcare. Moreover, use of digital tools has a positive effect on consumer experience. 60% of surveyed consumers reported being more satisfied with their most recent telehealth appointment than with an in-person appointment. Again, if you missed it, 60% were more satisfied with their most recent telehealth appointment. Point number 3, beyond digital options for engagement, consumers are also open to innovative care models that would allow them to receive personalized and holistic care, such as team-based care and care management at home. Although traditional in-person care is still the norm today, healthcare organizations can differentiate themselves by introducing innovative care, engagement, and support models. To effectively respond to this trend, organizations can commit to consumer centricity by bringing the right product or service to the right consumer in the right way. Like I said, this report is jam-packed, so I'll be diving into into trend number 2 next week. In the meantime, it will help us to reflect on all the opportunities that this first trend highlights for healthcare organizations that are truly committed to leading and differentiating their care. Because while McKinsey's research might be the latest to tell us about the business and clinical value of consumer centricity, it stands on years of research and trends indicating this exact thing, at least for those who are listening and paying attention. Let's commit to prioritizing consumer centricity by taking choices and expectations seriously. That's another way that we'll build the healthcare of tomorrow, and that's the Flava of the Week.
The flow.
Hey everyone, let's get back into the flow. Please give it up for our guest this week. I'm here with Matt DiVenere. He's the Director of Content Development at Optimum Healthcare IT and a personal friend. Matt, welcome to the Healthcare Wrap.
Jared, thanks for having me.
Can you give us the 2-minute version of who is Matt and what you do?
Yeah, who's Matt DiVenere? I started as a journalist, specifically a sports journalist out of college, and found a real love for telling stories and connecting with an audience. And then a new fad, quote unquote, came along called content marketing, and I fell in love with it. So I transitioned from journalism to content marketing, found healthcare marketing shortly after with Meditech, Nava Health as well. And I have been in healthcare marketing ever since. And now my latest spot at Optimum Healthcare IT with some incredible folks. And yeah, really excited to talk today.
I love that. So you mentioned navigating some career transitions. Is there some advice that has stuck with you over that time? I have yet to find anybody who has had like this linear progression in a healthcare marketing role anywhere where it's like, yep, I was planning point A to point Z all along the way and it went perfectly along that road. But is there any advice that has stuck with you as you've gone along here?
Yes. The biggest piece of advice that I've gotten and I give to folks on my team is be comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think in a lot of space, people tend to fall back to what they're used to, fall back to things that they've done from day one when they're in uncomfortable positions. In order to get to that next level, to get through that uncomfortable time, you just have to be able to, you know what, I'm in this space. I'm going to get to know it. I'm going to understand it. I just have to give myself some time and just be uncomfortable for a little bit. It's okay.
You know what? I love that. Probably everyone feels the same way in some degree. Let's start off talking about how you define thought leadership and what's involved in that when you hear that term.
I have so many emotions when I hear the thought leadership term. So I view thought leadership, that terminology, the same as I did when I first heard content marketing. With a lot of organizations out there right now, everyone's flooding to get thought leadership externally. The trouble is a lot of folks aren't really understanding what that truly is. What is the definition? The part that's tricky is I believe thought leadership is defined differently based on the organization and what you're looking to do as a brand. So when I'm creating thought leadership, my brain goes to brand, it goes to top funnel type of content, that awareness play. But it's a little bit deeper when you talk specifically with the subject matter experts to their why. I'm a huge champion of finding out the why. I think that's the biggest differentiator that you can have with your thought leadership content is if you're going to highlight a subject matter expert and they're going to talk about a specific content topic, the audience needs to understand, why should I listen to them? Why should I care? Why are they the expert? And if you can't provide the audience that before you provide them with the expert analysis, then you're really just creating evergreen content, which is fine, but don't slap the thought leadership label on it. Not until you put that why behind it.
Okay, so I'm following you along here. So you need to have the why as part of that. And so that's part of thought leadership. What else defines that versus some other type of content that you're creating?
Yeah, thought leadership to me is a type of content created. It's also all of the content you're creating. So not to be effervescent here for you, but I believe you could insert thought leadership in that concept into a lot of pieces of content that you're doing and the content types that you're delivering. Whether it's a blog, it's a case study, it's a white paper, it's a video, it's social media content as well. The difference between thought leadership content and regular content is how it makes the audience feel about you as a subject matter expert and then you as the brand as a whole. I think there's a huge amount of brand awareness play that comes with thought leadership. Because again, if I'm an organization, if I'm a payer or provider, and I truly want to be known as the place to go to learn about the senior population, the older adults, let's say that, I need to make sure that my subject matter experts understand our why, understand how it impacts their area of the solution that they're selling, and then being able to relate all of that back to the patient. Because again, like if you're creating a subject matter expert's opinion and you're putting it out there and it's just salesy, you're just pushing your solution, you're just pushing, a product, it misses the mark. And I think to be a leader, not to break the word down, but to be a thought leader, you have to have that extra step of the why I care about it, why I'm pushing it forward, why it's different. I'm going to keep going back to this word today, Jared, is why. If you can't answer the why in that piece of content, it's not that it's mislabeled. You're just not going far enough with the content you're creating.
Well, yeah, I can build on that because it harkens back to the practice. I don't know if we called it thought leadership back in the day when I was in the med device space, and we'd work with key opinion leaders. So your KOLs, right? And that's still the term as far as I know. But it was the same concept that there was an expert who had a valuable point of view on something that was useful to either people, your ultimate customers or partners or some other stakeholder that you're working with and want to communicate something with and build that brand with. And getting that expertise or that point of view, some perspective on something out there into the world, like that was the challenge. The devil was in the details of that. And a lot of times in the early days of digital marketing, at least, there wasn't much use of digital channels to do that. It would be in person. It would be at events. It'd be at conferences. And your KOLs, your key opinion leaders, would be there on stage and it'd be a coordinated thing. And everything was about getting people in that physical audience in a seat, making sure people knew that Dr. So-and-so was going to be speaking at 2:00 at the booth and making sure that happens. And I know it still happens to some degree, but that was like the main way that you were communicating that type of expertise or that perspective. And so to be able to see digital channels over the years, not only echo that, but perpetuate it and extend the influence and the impact of the thought leadership that was happening and have it be coined as this phrase, I think is an evolution. And I do think it's at a very different point than that was. I mean, that was 10, 12, 15 years ago where that was really in its heyday of that was the main way how you were going to associate your brand with this expert and communicate that out to people. So I feel like there was a model for it to be based on, but it's very different today. So how do you see thought leadership being created right now? Like what channels is it happening in the most and where are you seeing it at least?
Social media has really been an area, especially in the B2B space. I think LinkedIn has provided a large amount of value of building that audience awareness of who you are, who you work for, and what their mission is. I also like going on stage too. Like I think the speaking engagements that marketing teams can target and identify are important. To have the thought leadership portion of it be a part of your mechanism to drive marketing content is important. Again, on stage, it's all about your goals, right? You want to talk about your latest solution. Absolutely. You want to talk about your partnership or highlight a case study, things like that. I think those are unbelievably valuable, and I think they will continue to be valuable. The difference that I'd like to see, and I think this is what makes the gap between a good presentation and a great presentation, is the thought leadership positioning. Is it at the beginning? Is it at the end? And it's tying it back to the ultimate goal for your organization. Are you patient facing? Is it about the better patient experience? Are you an IT vendor? Is it really about cost saving? Is it about just that deep breath that everybody who's using your software can take because it's easier, it's more accessible, there's more interoperability with it, so there's not as many clicks, screen grabs, things like that. That portion of it, I think, really makes the difference. And when you're in the audience, especially 3-day, 4-day conference, and you're hearing another longer version of a case study, like it's tough to step back and say, this one stood out, that one stood out. They kind of all blend together. But if you have that thought leadership part of it, where it just talks about, all right, this moment we had success. What does it mean for the future? What can you bring back to your team and immediately put into place? What is something that you should think about down the road that will line you up for better success? Or if I've already done this, okay, and I'm positioned ahead of where the speaker is, where do we all go as an industry? If we're all catching up to the same levels, then it has to be about that next step. If you're not talking next step, like that moment of time is great to celebrate a success. But as you know, in healthcare, it's not about right now. We have to get to that next iteration of everything.
I'm curious where you've seen it be the most valuable when we're talking about healthcare and health IT.
Yeah, there's definitely some topics where I think thought leadership is really shining through. I mean, during the pandemic, of course, like a lot of organizations tied specifically to COVID, tied specifically to what it meant for the patients, for the organizations, for the industry as a whole. You've seen a shift a bit in what we're talking about externally. And by we, I mean the industry is, we're talking about this new normal, this balance between telehealth and in-person, this balance between healthcare consumerism and, the same old, where people are showcasing their thought leadership is identifying the current status that we're in, the current world that we're living in, and adapting their talking points or their brand to the future iterations of what's going on and how it's going to be predicted out. If you are just going back to how things were and continuing to talk about your talking points, but just throwing in the words in this new world or in this new breath of healthcare, of the healthcare industry, you're missing the mark. But within our space and to call it thought leadership is like, you're bringing in organizations that might not be healthcare specific in the past, like the non-healthcare entities. Jared, I'm going to name a few because we're fans of them, like Best Buy Health and all those groups that were not directly healthcare to start that are moving towards that, Dollar General, all that. Like for a large organization to call themselves a thought leader and ignore the disruptors that are happening and the changes that are happening, it misses the mark, right? Again, if you want to create sales enablement content, if you want to create stuff for your blog that shows how important this topic is, the white papers, the case studies, everything, there's 1,000% room for you. But to have that thought leadership label in it, you have to look to where we currently are in this industry, in the economy, and in the bigger picture, the 1,000-foot view, and then how you're going to address it. Doesn't have to be specific yet. I'm not asking people to go on stage, give me 5 things that are going to happen in the year 2050. But what are some steps right now that your organization can take to just continue the path forward to help the consumers of healthcare? I mean, we're in a golden age right now where people are more in tuned and informed about their healthcare decisions and their lifestyle choices, how it impacts their health, access, things like that, than ever before in my mind. So if you're a health system or a payer and you're on stage and you don't directly address that movement, your goal certainly should not include the word thought leadership.
So why is this so difficult to execute successfully? That's a great point right there. The difference between sales enablement content and, hey, just because it's in the same channel, just because it's on LinkedIn, just because it is an article or whatnot, doesn't mean it's thought leadership. Just because you had a quote from somebody in leadership doesn't mean it's thought leadership. So there is a difference there. And I agree. There's a place and a need for all these different types of content. But why is it so difficult for organizations to do thought leadership successfully and see the value of it? I feel like that's not always the case, that we're still here in 2024 building the case for this type of content out there. What are you seeing?
I agree. I think the battle continues when it comes to this thought leadership concept. The trickiest part about building a thought leadership program within an organization is the executive buy-in. Like it is important to pull them along and get them to understand what the goal is here. The trouble is when we're throwing thought leadership on everything, sales enablement content, mid-funnel content, awareness play, brand stuff, at an executive level, it makes it seem like, okay, if this is all tried and true, we should be able to track it. There should be ways that we could tie it back to ROI and like that. Because with case studies and white papers and webinars, there are tried and true ways that you could report up to an executive and say, this is the engagement that I received. This is the potential dollars that are behind it. This was the cost associated with it. Here's the meat and bones of the rest of it. This is what I'm giving you, right? Or I'm handing to sales. With thought leadership, at times, we can give social media engagement numbers. We could give more podcast opportunities or earned media opportunities, speaking engagements. So it's on the marketing team to tie that back to a language that an executive can understand and what it means for the business. And every business is going to be different. Every organization is different. I have tied this for, the last 3 or 4 organizations, it's been different for me every single time because it's dependent on what the executives want. There are some executives that just want, look, I want 100,000 people to like my Facebook page. I mean, how many times have we all heard that, right? So you have to help them understand, hey, if you're a car dealership in Oklahoma, do I really care if 10,000 people in California like my post from yesterday? Probably not. They're not going to buy a car from me anytime soon. It's about understanding the audience and getting to where we need to be, right? So to understand that executive need, marketing has to be able to bear down and meet with executives on a regular basis. Not only to understand the business objectives and the overall projections of it all, the growth mindset that the executives have, but then we have to also be able to say, okay, it's going to directly tie our thought leadership buckets to your buckets in XYZ ways. If we're in the media more, you're going to just see our name more, which that awareness play means a stronger brand, which means when people do go to that case study, there's a trust there. There's an understanding of who we are, our why that's there. If we don't have that in the start, a lot of people out there are selling goods with no background. I'm not going to buy anything on my personal credit card of a brand I have no idea of, but I just read one piece of content on. I got to know who these people are. I have to understand their why, what they're doing, like what the goal is for me to invest in something like that. And I think in healthcare, especially at the healthcare IT level, you're spending millions and millions of dollars. I'm not going to spend millions of dollars because there's one really good case study out there. And for the executives, you just have to help them understand that.
Yeah, you're right. So it's generally a longer term play. So that is a challenge for sure. So I think when we even just talk about an idea like making healthcare more consumer centered, thought leadership plays this major role where I look back, 2 or 3 years ago, and we weren't talking about it in the same way. The industry was not asking, how do we do that? We were talking about patient experience, but we weren't talking about what actually leads somebody up to the point where they actually become a patient, where they schedule an appointment with a healthcare professional. And in my mind, there's a lot of the consumer experience in that part of it that happens before you become a patient, at least for that day. Again, you can become patients at various times, but it's all the things that lead up to that choice. And so I see it, I guess, collectively, a lot of different organizations offering some perspectives. And I do think, like you said, it makes a difference in the brand that leadership is coming from. So I guess just more of a thought than anything. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing or you feel the same way. And if so, like how health IT or healthcare organizations can latch onto that and use their thought leadership more effectively.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. I think the brands that are doing it right, like they do a subtle job. Their words are strong, but they're not meant to shake the jar a lot. Right? Like we're not here to bludgeon you over the head with words like revolutionary and first of its kind and industry change. Like the brands that are doing it right come from people who are trusted. They come from brands that are doing a very good job of connecting with their audience. So especially if it's the B2B side of the world, you have to understand the path that your organization is going to be a part of. If it's a supply chain move, or if it's just, a cog in the wheel type of scenario, or if you are specifically making significant changes for things, you just have to understand to play your role and to have that reflect in your marketing strategy as well. Like I can't be somebody who is this part of the ecosystem and say, we are saving lives. Yes, probably, indirectly, for sure. But if it's part of your brand play, we're saving lives, but I don't want to pick fun at revenue cycle organizations, but that progression is sometimes a leap for the audience. And it's an audience that we're immediately skeptical in healthcare. That's usually the first reaction. And then we're trusting, right? If a doctor tells you something, you're usually like, do I get a second opinion? You see it on TV all the time. Oh, should I get a second opinion or something? There's a skepticism there. But you'll notice with the stronger brands, the ones that put in time and effort into their thought leadership and have meaningful conversations externally, that level is gone. It goes right to trust. It's right. And you hold them, those subject matter experts, just to a higher level. because you just understand and you connect with them better. It's an easier flow to it all.
Yeah. I think that's spot on when you're talking about this intersection of thought leadership and the success and the value based on the brand that it's coming from. I think that's so true. And it's easy for traditional healthcare organizations to look at a brand outside of healthcare that's coming into the space or is new to the space, and like retail or a lot of digital health companies, and just say, yeah, kind of be dismissive of it. Whereas the consumer, the customer or the patient who that thought leadership is intended for actually has a good impression of that perspective of that content because it's from a consumer brand. I guess I keep latching on to like grocery brands. Like when I hear about primary care coming from Kroger, Albertsons, Hy-Vee, Costco, right? These places where grocery brands tend to be ranked pretty highly compared to healthcare organizations. So in general, they have a leg up when it comes to where the thought leadership is coming from. So I definitely see the difference there. And it's just being aware of that, like you said, when you're setting expectations for things. So very true. I want to make sure we get to this future of content because I'm really interested to hear your perspective on where you think things are going. So I think AI, when we mention it, has kind of a double meaning in content because there's content about AI, but then AI is changing content literally as we speak, the way it's created and produced. So curious what you think about what the future of content looks like and what's the role of AI when we're talking about that.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, it is an eerie feeling. When I was in college, I went to St. Michael's College, not to plug my alumni here, but I went to St. Michael's College up in Vermont. I went to school for print journalism. Do you remember that, Jared? The newspapers and everything? Yeah.
I do.
I went to school for that thinking, that's going to be my calling. I'm going to have a column. I'm going to be on the front page. Like, that's just what I'm going to do. From freshman year to senior year, the world changed, right? So I graduated in 2010. And I'll tell you, my senior thesis, the name of the project was The Death of the Newspaper. So you could tell that things had changed drastically in that space. I bring this up because I feel very similar to how we currently are with AI. Not as egregious or outlandish as that was. I was just trying to draw some eyes from my, senior thesis at that point. But I think we're at a moment right now where AI is going to have a significant impact on amount of content that's created, the value that people place on content from an organization's perspective, and the purpose and goal. Everything is going to have to be so much more fine-tuned when you have a goal for your content and the reason why you're creating it. When journalism moved from writing as part of, the team to that BuzzFeed model where it was, we're getting pay-per-clicks, we're getting high volume. You're writing 30 articles a week. I remember all those job opportunities out there that was like, you have to write 50 articles a week. These are all the topics you have to think about, things like that. It was such a shift from a journalism perspective. A lot of the organizations buckled down and said, you know what, let's try to find a blend. Let's try to work with this new model. Let's try to move in the path towards the future. The majority of journalism put their feet in the ground, put their heels down and said, we will not be doing anything like that. And they got left behind. I mean, look at the industry right now. I mean, it's owned by 6 or 8 conglomerates, and that's it. My concern with this is that healthcare, as slow as they typically move, I'm nervous that that's where we're going, where some organizations are not going to buy into AI. They're not going to see the value in it. They're going to say, you know what, our team is doing enough, and it's going to have a catastrophic ending. And I don't want to be a narcissist. I don't want to think negatively here, but in order for organizations to look to the future, and again, like we want to talk about being a thought leader as a vendor or healthcare IT or whatever you are, as an employer, if you want to be a thought leader too, you kind of have to figure out where AI sits with your organization and specifically in your marketing team. There's value to it. There's places where it makes sense, and it shifts the mindset of a lot of marketers from writers to editors, which I'd love to hear your opinion on too, because that shift is difficult. I mean, I've done it and it's taken years to be able to go from writing something down, going through the drafts and then having it be completed to being on the opposite side where you're mostly the editor and you're creating the parameters. I'd love your take, Jared, that shift from writer to editor. And if you think that that's where marketing could have the most simple transition with AI in their organization?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I do think that will be the main shift, is being shifted to editors. And it is an uncomfortable role for some content creators where they're not used to that. And there is a line, rightfully so, of saying you created all of this, that you did all the research, you put this content together, and it's all yours. And there will be a line that you have to draw at some point that says, well, yeah, but look, you wrote this content for X business goal. So the way to achieve that goal is you have to achieve that goal more efficiently, more effectively, fewer resources, you have less time to do it. And here are several tools. Here is a plethora of tools to do that. So you need to learn those tools. I would imagine carpenters at some point, before they had hammers, right? They were like, yeah. I learned all this by hand. I can do everything by hand. I'm the best at doing all this by hand. And then hammers came along and they're like, some probably picked it right up and like, holy crap. And then now I can really build things a lot better. So it's probably a stupid analogy, but it kind of holds true. Every craftsman and craftsperson at some point had a new tool come along, and some adopted it and some didn't. And you got to learn it at some point. And there are ways of doing that and keeping yourself informed without putting the pressure on yourself or feeling like what you're doing is less valuable. I see it as a net positive. I think we're going to be in a much better place. I think there is going to be just a ton of dreadful zero value content that's just so generic. And that's actually the opportunity for your good content to rise above that if you're using the tools right. So I tend to see things as an opportunity first and then go from there. So that's kind of where my mind's at. I don't know if you feel the same way.
No, I do. I do think this is an opportunity for a lot of organizations to do more with their marketing team rather than be worried about, is this going to impact my numbers? Am I going to lose my job as a writer? I think this gives us an opportunity to get deeper in. Again, I'm going to tie it back to the beginning here, deeper into your why. So if you have a mechanism that can create this evergreen style of content, stuff that paints the picture of where we are, as the writer or the editor, your job now becomes, let's dive one level more, because you're going to be able to Google that topic and 1,000 articles are going to come up, all written very similarly because they're all AI generated. Getting that next level down means you have to have the subject matter expert buy-in, which means you have to have a regular cadence meeting with them. You have to have internal thought leadership as well. So what I say by that is my favorite part of creating content is going back and forth with the subject matter experts on articles that are coming out, topics that are there, and just, bouncing ideas and concepts and futuristic goals back and forth, and just kind of like diving into their brain a little bit and just getting to understand what makes each of them tick and what it means for our business objectives and our goals at that level. We used to do this harvest fest, basically, where we used to do this idea harvest, where we would get 3 topics. We'd write down 3 topics. We'd have 4 of our SMEs come onto a Zoom call for an hour. And we would just say, let's talk about these. Just like, let's talk just in general. And then the next step is, what does it mean for our business? And then what does it mean for our industry? And what's one thing everybody could do right now to get ready for it? If we could pair an AI generated outline, basics, things like that, and allow marketers to get that one level deeper, there's no stopping us. Like, we are going to create some of the most incredible content you can think of, because we're all inquisitive. We all want to know that next level. But right now, a lot of people in organizations, they're short-staffed for whatever reason. There's not enough people on manning the lifeboats. So if AI can come in and help and allow us to get that next level down, it's a blessing.
Well, that's a perfect place for us to tie up our conversation. I feel like, Matt, just thinking of the opportunity and seeing it as a blessing, ultimately, it's going to take us some work to get there, but it's the destination that's happening whether we want to or not. So, as always, it's the opportunity to be one of the first to at least get comfortable. We'll tie it back to that piece that you shared with us at the beginning. And with that, that's a wrap for this episode. It's been an absolute pleasure, Matt, speaking with you. I've had the pleasure of speaking with Matt DiVenere from Optimum Healthcare IT. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Jared.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please spread the word. Tell your colleagues to tune in for all the awesomeness, then leave a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. This show is produced by Shift Forward Health, the channel for changemakers. Subscribe to Shift Forward Health on your favorite podcast app, and you'll be subscribed to our entire library of shows. See our full lineup at shiftforwardhealth.com. One subscription, all the podcasts you need, and it's all for free. And remember, we might have a lot of work to do in healthcare, but we'll get there faster together. Thanks again.